Hey everybody, welcome to Kayfabe Critique, where we'll be covering sports entertainment, pro wrestling. We'll be going over events, topics, wrestlers. We'll go past, present, etc. as we go on with the show. We were set to launch with you earlier this week. We had a full Summerslam recap ready to go. Unfortunately, we had some technical difficulties. We weren't able to get it on there, but we are coming back this week, getting you the extra episode to make sure we are on here, getting you some content already. We're going to go with some SummerSlam fallout. So everything that happened at SummerSlam, and Raw and SmackDown, covering just those big topics. But before we get started, Jason, why don't you tell everybody about yourself?
Well, I'm Jason. I've been a fan since, I don't want to date myself. Probably the biggest moment for me was starting at WrestleMania 3 with Savage and Steamboat. Been to a few WrestleManias. This isn't my day job. This is something I'm just passionate about. I love talking about wrestling, talking about the business. So let's roll.
And so me, I started, as a small kid, got into wrestling, and I really, somewhere around the WrestleMania 1 time frame, I remember watching it on VHS with my brothers, really kind of getting into that and just really becoming a Hulkamaniac. And watching that through, exactly, watching that through, the red and yellow ran through my blood, and watching him with his peak at WrestleMania 3 against Andre. And then it was roughly around WrestleMania 5 when I felt like I kind of had outgrown Hulkamania.
Yeah, and you have a lot of people that kind of say that. Like, 89, he went against Randy Savage, Mega Powers Exploded, which was the first pay-per-view my mom ever ordered for me. Shout out to moms. And I just remember that match feeling like, okay, you really can't top that because the Macho Man was so big then, and Hogan was so big then. And then, even if you listen to other people say, it's like, yeah, after that Mega Power explosion, it had hit its peak.
Yeah, and that's how it was for me. When Macho Man lost to Hogan, I was kind of done for a while. I stepped back, I stopped watching. But then right around Royal Rumble 90, when I heard it coming down to Hogan and Warrior, that the two of them went one-on-one for a little bit in Royal Rumble 90, I started tuning back in. WrestleMania 6, Warrior took the belt. I was excited again. Up until WrestleMania 7, when Slaughter drops the belt to Hogan, and I felt, okay, they're just doing the same thing again. And I tuned away for years, kind of just doing other stuff. And as you know, I used to box. Tyson was my childhood hero.
Yeah.
And when Mike Tyson got involved, flipping through the channels late 1997, I saw Tyson's picture on Raw.
Yeah.
So I tuned in just to see what he was going to do. And I was thinking, okay, I'm just going to watch up through WrestleMania to see what he does, and then I'll be done. But I found myself hooked.
Yeah, man, it was easy to get hooked because, Tyson comes back in. I was kind of mad at Mike because I had gone over somebody's house thinking he's about to beat Evander Holyfield, and then he starts biting the ears and stuff. I'm like, dude, what, for real? Luckily I only paid $5 to go over there. But I was still kind of down on Mike. But then I saw he was going to be on WWE. I was like, So he pushes Austin, and it erupts, and I was like, okay, because up to that point, I started I kind of falling away, but then the NWO got me plugged back in, and then I started seeing what WWF was doing. I was like, oh, okay, y'all trying to do a little something over here.
It was that reality base that it felt like when I turned it back on. Like, the characters were different than when I had been watching. I started, D-Generation X, Nation of Domination, and Stone Cold.
Yeah.
And I was just hooked.
Yeah.
And those storylines were just so compelling, and you bought into the characters, you really understood the characters, every story felt special. I remember pay-per-views around that time, every single match on the card, you knew what was going on, you knew why, and just couldn't turn away.
You couldn't turn away from the pay-per-views. We used to have a rotation. One month somebody would get it, the next month somebody would get it, everybody was putting in on it, ordering pizza or whatever. And it didn't hurt that the WWF had some women back then too.
Oh yeah, Sable, Sonny, yeah.
Yeah, they were, not like today where they were more eye candy back then. Today we're going to talk about how athletic they are. They still look good, but these girls, they can go.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. And I became obsessed, and like a lot of people during that time, me and my buddies, we did a backyard wrestling thing. I created characters, I developed our storylines, and, we had a good time doing that, and I really found myself going back and catching up on everything I had missed over those years, including stuff that happened on WCW, seeing what the big deal with the NWO was, which sporting that shirt today and excited to hear what's going to happen on October 27th, the new NWO announcement coming.
Yeah, got me curious too. I still remember the night after the heel turn at Bash at the Beach. You would have thought that the president got shot or something. You would have just thought that. I mean, you felt like something had died. I mean, it was only Hulkamania, but to a lot of people, Hulkamania was it. I mean, people taking back shirts. I mean, kids legit crying in the audience. But what I saw in the audience was people cheering, like, finally, you're doing something different. Mm-hmm. And that's what draws people.
Yeah, with him arguably being the biggest star in the history of the sport, definitely the biggest hero in the history of sport, the larger-than-life character. Yeah, him turning heel, him making that turn and coming out and turning his back on WCW, joining the NWO. Yeah, there was that mixed reaction. You had the shock of everyone, but then you had everyone else like, wow, this has never been done before.
Yeah, and at that point, like I said, I was hooked.
So we talked about how big pay-per-views felt during the Attitude Era. We talked about how big Bash at the Beach was for WCW 96. So we just came off a big pay-per-view. Mm-hmm. One of the traditional big ones for WWE. What do you think about SummerSlam?
This was one of the better SummerSlams that they've had in several years. Like, when I think about SummerSlam, I think about 89 with Savage and Zeus versus Hogan and Beefcake. I think about that one. I think about 98 with Triple H and The Rock. And that's the night The Rock really got made, and Stone Cold and Undertaker. And then 20 years later, you get this one, 2018. I mean, top to bottom, I really couldn't think of a bad match.
Yeah, I thought that SummerSlam was definitely loaded in terms of matches. Match quality through the roof. They had a lot of solid matches on there. Some of the stories weren't quite as compelling as, like you mentioned, like 1998. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember the Austin Undertaker storyline really draw me in, but just the athleticism and talent at this year's SummerSlam was off the page.
I mean, and you start off with Rollins and Ambrose. I mean, Rollins and Ziggler, which you and we met Seth Rollins in WrestleMania, was that 26? Yeah, in Phoenix, before he was Seth Rollins. But, I mean, starting from top to bottom, starting with the first match, I'm like, the show's been stolen already.
Yeah, several high spots, a lot of exciting moments. And then we saw an interesting Raw and an interesting SmackDown. Yeah. So, let's start from the top with some of the big things going on right now. Yeah. So let's start with Daniel Bryan in the Miz. 8 years in the making, going into SummerSlam. What'd you think of it?
I thought the build for this was great. I mean, in this day and age, you know, it's almost like they try to make feuds over a month. And that doesn't work for me. I like for stuff to simmer. Like, if you cook it on the grill, you want your meat to marinate so you can let the flavor get into it. I mean, this thing with Daniel Bryan and The Miz, The Miz trained the guy in NXT. I mean, they showed some of the scenes from that. And then you go to, I mean, Miz, didn't Daniel Bryan beat The Miz for his first title in WWE? I think it was a U.S. title, if I'm not mistaken. So then you go to that, and Daniel Bryan getting injured and becoming the SmackDown GM, and I mean, even the beef that they had on the SmackDown set, on the SmackDown after show set, I mean, it felt legit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like you said, those storylines that really were the seeds planted, and it takes that time to develop. That's one of the things that made the Attitude Era special. Mm-hmm. Was everything just flowed together. And in this particular rivalry, we saw that. And we saw during the build-up for SummerSlam advertising the match. And what I loved about it was, like you said, it felt legit. It felt organic. Like this just naturally came together.
Right. It felt like it naturally came together. And once you got in the ring, it felt like the match was a natural because they worked well together. I mean, and in my opinion, they must have some kind of relationship backstage, because for them to work that well together and be able to pull off that level of realism, I mean, I don't know if they really hate each other legitimately or if they're just that convincing as actors. Either way, you're hooked.
And so we're talking about two great in-ring performers.
Right.
They're both very established in their characters. They're both good on the microphone. But that you bring up an interesting question. Could there actually be a legit rivalry between the two of them? After all, Daniel Bryan was coming in as the rookie, and The Miz was already the pro that was supposed to be his mentor, and yet Daniel Bryan really kind of got to a larger platform than The Miz has.
Right, and in a lot of ways, did Daniel Bryan really need The Miz when he came in? I think that was also just more storyline than anything, because Daniel Bryan, I mean, he was trained by Shawn Michaels, I mean, who is probably the GOAT.
Right.
So, I mean, he probably really didn't need The Miz for as much of as definitely not wrestling wise, but maybe more as far as the mic skills and the mouthpiece. So, I mean, having them have that relationship starting back in 2010, I mean, it aided them in 2018 because you can always go back to that and like, Miz, I didn't need you, dude. It's like, you came from the real world. I mean, I've been wrestling all over the world.
Mm-hmm. And looking at that, and I think some of that, the baggage that The Miz has to bring with him from being a reality star and then trying to break into wrestling, people forget, how long he was a fan.
Yeah.
And I think people overlook, how good he actually is.
Yeah. It's easy to overlook how good he actually is because he annoys you, but if you're a true fan, you look at that guy and you're just like, wow. I mean, you don't want to miss anything that he does. I mean, for me, he's kind of like The Rock back in the day because when The Rock had the mic, it was like everything stopped. I mean, even his promo Tuesday night, when he was acting like he was retiring, I'm like, what is this dude going to do with this? I mean, he knows, he's learned how to get the crowd in the palm of his hand.
Mm-hmm.
He's learned how to do that, and he's one of the best. He may be the best on the roster at it right now.
And seeing like when in 2011, when he reached a height, he became WWE champion, and he hasn't been back to that stage.
Right.
And Daniel Bryan's came in, and he's shot to that stage, and the crowd's completely behind Daniel Bryan. So there could be legitimate heat there.
Mm-hmm.
It could be just a great storyline of two guys that really work well together, and we can see a lot more coming in the future.
Definitely. I mean, they've already booked Hell in a Cell for next month with getting the ladies involved, which I kind of saw that coming with the finish of the Summerslam match, and I'm not complaining because we'll get to see Maurice and we'll get to see Brie, but it's just such a natural rivalry, and hopefully one of them will get the world title so they can fight over that.
Yeah, and I think for the Hell in a Cell match, it also helps promote The Miz and Maurice.
Yeah.
The Miz and Mrs. Their TV show.
Guilty pleasure.
Yeah, so it's definitely gets that out there. And at first, initially, I thought just because of the history and how long that those two would be in a Hell in a Cell match. But then when I saw what they booked, the mixed tag match, I was actually happy that they went with it because the Hell in a Cell definitely would have been the finale of the rivalry. Which now it's set up to where they can go in, compete at the Super Show. Mm-hmm. They can go in and be maybe competing to be on the Survivor Series team or have to coexist on the Survivor Series team and carry on to a bigger rivalry, maybe even stretching all the way to Mania.
You could carry that thing all the way to Mania, and again, you could put the world title. Miz deserves a world title run. WWE Creative, if you're listening, Miz deserves a world title run. I love AJ Styles, I love Samoa Joe, but having Miz as a champion, that's money.
I agree, and I think Miz versus AJ to get to that world title run would be huge.
It would be huge, and you have Miz go over in a way that, I mean, as Miz would do. I mean, the thing with Maurice slipping the brass knuckles was brilliant. I mean, you do something like that again. I mean, it doesn't make AJ look bad, and then you could have AJ and Daniel compete in a #1 contenders match at maybe Fastlane or something like that to get to the world title match, and then Daniel goes over. Then you got WrestleMania They're 34. Gosh, I don't even know what number we're on right now. But you got your WrestleMania match made.
So let's switch gears. Let's go to SmackDown's Women's Championship. You had, at SummerSlam, you had the triple threat match.
Mm-hmm.
Carmella carrying the belt into the ring, going against Becky, who initially looked like it was going to be a one-on-one match, and then Charlotte gets added to it. What do you think about this?
I love the match. I mean, all three of those women can work. Carmella is a great heel champion. Plus, she has fly takes and shoes. She rocks Jordans, and I have a few pair of Jordans, maybe 2 or 3 pair at home. I love the way the match finished, and I love the swerve at the end. I saw it. I could kind of see it coming, but I just love how it happened. Again, you have backstory with Becky and Charlotte, and whoever is booking this stuff, they're earning their money these days.
Yeah, looking at it, like going into the match, I felt like Charlotte was going to walk out with the title, but at the same time, I was like, wow, I could really see Becky having her moment right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see it going either way, and like you said, all three of them are strong. Carmella's a good heel. Charlotte is at a whole nother level as a performer.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Becky, who is just so talented.
Yeah.
And waiting to see what was going to happen with it. And so at that end, when, Charlotte wins the title, she, comes in, Becky's got Carmella down, Charlotte jumps in, steals away the victory, essentially. Pulls off the title, and then we have almost the Michaels Jericho WrestleMania 19,
Yep.
the hug, and then the turn.
Yep. That's exactly what you had. The AJ Nakamura moment. And it's a moment that you can relate to. I mean, you see your friend potentially winning a world title, but then you're standing on the outside. It's like, oh, wait, I'm competing for the world title too. So it's like, it's that ethical quandary. It's like, that's the kind of stuff that will pull people in. People can relate to that. It's like, man, do you want the promotion, or do you want your boy to get or your girl to get the promotion? It's like, what do you want? I mean, what do you do? And that's it's such a masterfully done rivalry. And when the crowd went crazy in Brooklyn, they might have a problem because Charlotte's supposed to be the babyface in this, isn't she?
Well, I think, like Becky's, we talk about her talent, everyone has seen her come through NXT, everyone knows her story and knows that she's been fighting to get that championship.
Mm-hmm.
And so seeing that it was in her grasp, and then Charlotte comes in and pulls away, and Charlotte, a multiple-time champion.
Right.
And then Becky turns. So it's almost like the crowd was able to get behind her, which I was left asking at the end of the show, when the crowd's chanting, "You deserve it."
Mm-hmm.
Were they chanting that Becky deserves the title, or that Charlotte deserved Becky turning on her?
I think you had a little bit of both at that point. And also, you still had some fans cheering for Charlotte because, hey, like they say, it's a dog-eat-dog world out there. I mean, she's fighting for the world title. I mean, you're not just supposed to stand there and let somebody win the world title if you're in the same match. I mean, Charlotte didn't technically do anything wrong. However, she just threw her girl by the side.
And we continue to see the heat build on SmackDown.
Yeah.
So I think we're definitely in for a lot more between the two of these, and I can't wait to see them one-on-one.
I can't wait to see it either. And again, I hope they don't do it right away. I hope they let it build at least until this all-women's pay-per-view, which I'm excited for because, again, the women's division, you don't want to miss that anymore. That used to be, hopefully I don't sound too sexist, that used to be the pee break match. Now you don't want to miss it. Now you want to take a pee break doing one of the guys' matches. And it's not because you just want to look at girls in scantily clad clothing. You want to see athleticism. These girls, sometimes they've actually stolen the show.
Yeah, absolutely. So, U.S. title. SummerSlam, Nakamura versus Hardy. What'd you think?
That was the pee break match. And when I say this, I'm saying that because everything else was so good, and even this match was good. It's just that there wasn't enough history between those two. It's felt like they were just thrown together. I mean, it felt like that match wasn't even about an AJ or a Nakamura Hardy storyline. It's more about Hardy and Orton.
So if the U.S. title wasn't on the line, would that match have even been significant, even something you would remember?
No.
Other than just spot with
No.
the swanton to the outside.
That's about the only thing I'll remember.
And that's where I think I was really struggling with it, is it didn't feel like there was a story. I didn't feel invested to it. I just wasn't emotionally connected to it. I think both guys are great in-ring performers. I love watching Jeff Hardy. Sometimes it makes me nervous, and where he's going to hurt himself. But like you said, it was almost like they were, here they are fighting for the championship, but yet it was like the overshadowing of Randy Orton.
Yeah. And, I mean, you have Randy Orton, what, a 14-time world champion, basically doing a slow walk-in on a pay-per-view after a match. And you have John Cena not even at the pay-per-view, which 2002, I think, may be the last time we didn't see Cena on a Summerslam. So it's like, that struck me as odd. But again, that Nakamura Hardy match just felt thrown together because what do we do with Orton? What do we do with Nakamura? What do we do with Hardy? What do we do?
Yeah, and so on SmackDown, it looks like Jeff gets his revenge.
Right.
Where do we go from here?
No idea. I guess you could do Hell in a Cell. So Jeff can jump off something again.
Does it become a triple threat? I'm like you. It's just, this is one that it just doesn't feel like it's naturally flowing.
It really doesn't. Does Matt come over to SmackDown, because they're not really doing anything with him, and the dude is a creative genius. So they need to make sure they don't let the U.S. title lose significance.
But speaking of titles that are not losing significance, has the tag team division been hotter in recent years than it is on SmackDown right now?
Oh my gosh. Man. Between all the teams that they have on there, every team on there is a legit champion. And I think all the teams on there have been champions with a few exceptions, but the match at SummerSlam delivered. The way it ended, you could kind of see the return match setting up. Now it's hard to get kind of concerned. What are they going to do with the Bludgeon Brothers? Because that invincibility's gone.
So I was wondering that too. So you had the Bludgeon Brothers, just this dominating force, coming into SummerSlam. I thought they did a great job of making the New Day look strong, but escaping with that true heel style win.
Right.
Where they lose the match, but they retain the titles.
Right.
And so they definitely walk out with that heel face. And I knew it was going to move. You obviously knew it was going to move something further. I didn't really expect it to happen so quick. I didn't expect the titles to switch hands the very next show.
I really didn't expect it either. And it was... I don't have a problem with the New Day having the titles, but it seems like the way they're moving with the angle that they shot with Gallows and Anderson and the bar backstage, it seems like the Bludgeons, where are they going to fit in?
Yeah, so we get to see, are they going to demand a rematch? Are we going to see more of almost a tag team round robin to see what comes out of it? So, yeah, the division's so hot right now, they can really go multiple ways.
And we didn't even see the Usos on there, which is personally my favorite tag team on SmackDown.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, right now, personally, I really started getting into the Bludgeon Brothers. At first, when they walk out, I wasn't quite sure about it, but just that overall look and that extra dimension they add as far as like that mystique.
Right. And they had to do something with them because Rowan and Harper, they had really not been utilized as well since the Wyatts broke up, and who knows? they say Ray is technically a Raw talent and the Bludgeons are SmackDown talents. I mean, who says they can't put them back together? I mean, who says they can't just show jump? I mean, it's WWE.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And chaos.
Yeah.
Create that chaos and see where it goes. So, one of the matches I was looking forward to going into SummerSlam was a Raw Women's Championship. Ronda Rousey, baddest woman on the planet, former UFC Women's Champion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, now competing her second title match. First one ended without her, where she was on the grasp of winning the championship and it gets pulled away. And so now here she is, competing against one of the best heels in the business with Alexa. What'd you think about the match?
While it hurt me to see Bliss, get her arm nearly broken, it was inevitable for Ronda Rousey to be the women's champion. I mean, it's like, what woman on the planet can beat Ronda Rousey legitimately, besides Holly Holm, and who was the other woman that knocked her out?
Yeah, well, in UFC, you never have an undefeated fighter.
Right.
They don't last very long, so the sport evolves so quick, everything moves so fast. You know, I mean, Brock's been beat.
Right.
You know, so, you know, it's fine to have, you know, Brock steps in, after, you know, he lost in UFC, he steps back in, he's almost invincible in WWE, so it makes sense to bring Ronda in and have her almost invincible. And talking about Ronda, just the learning curve.
Yeah.
How fast she's picked up and how good she looks in such a short period of time.
Yeah.
I was initially worried. I loved the idea of her coming in. I liked her in UFC. I loved what you could do with that style of character. Because you never really see that in the women's division.
Right.
And so to see her come in and now to be able to execute the moves the way she's doing it, it looks like she's legitimately out there trying to rip people's arms out their sockets.
Right. It definitely looks that way, and the way she had Alexa's arm contorted, I was just like, ugh. And I'm impressed with how fast she's picked it up. I mean, she's been a fan. It seemed everything she did looked very natural, and like she knew exactly what she was trained very well. And I'm just excited to see how far it goes, because she's also bringing more mainstream attention to the WWE and to herself. I mean, which is never a bad thing. I mean, she's probably one of the best legit athletes to compete in WWE history.
And now you go into Monday Night Raw, her coronation, getting the title, and she has the run-in with Stephanie McMahon. She initially, her first appearance in WWE, you know, she had the run-in, her and The Rock with Triple H and Stephanie.
Yeah.
Her first official match, she teamed with Kurt Angle to take on Triple H and Stephanie. And here we see an issue coming out with her and Stephanie again, and she has Stephanie down with the armbar one more time. Is this somewhat feeling like Stone Cold and Vince?
That's exactly what it feels like. The difference in this case is Stone Cold, I don't think, could rip Vince's arm off by snapping her finger. I mean, Ronda Rousey could, if she really wanted to, if she really disliked somebody, she could legitimately hurt someone in the ring if she really wanted to. So I can definitely see that happening, and there's a natural rivalry there between Stephanie and Ronda. I also have a crush on Stephanie, so I don't want to see her get hurt either. But from a business standpoint, that's another feud you can build and let that thing just simmer and marinate, and then get to your payoff at WrestleMania.
Yeah, and when you think of Ronda's character, she was so where she pushed boundaries in UFC. You think of her music, her intro song, you know, Reputation, and looking at that, it's like she's the perfect anti-authority figure. And in this situation, it's the anti-authority is going to be the face, the authority is going to be the heel, And when we talked about earlier, she had a shot at the title,
Mm-hmm.
but it was yanked out from under her.
Right.
Could that be Stephanie's move? Does Stephanie bring Nia back? And Stephanie is in Nia's corner and sends Nia after Ronda.
That makes absolute sense. Because Nia legitimately is the only woman possibly on the roster. I mean, size-wise, Ronda, she's bigger than Ronda, and she was giving Ronda a little bit of the business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when you look at that, it's almost as when Heyman tells a story of bringing Goldberg back was because you needed someone that people would believe could beat Brock. When you look at Nia, you believe Nia can beat Ronda.
Absolutely. And the only other woman, there's possibly maybe two other women that in history, that in the history of WWE that I think could possibly give Ronda a run. One of those is Trish, and the other one is Beth Phoenix. And I'm kind of even iffy on Trish.
Would you have thrown China in there?
Ooh, I forgot about China. That would have been something.
Yeah, and so speaking of the other half of that match, you have Alexa. You mentioned earlier how The Miz has the ability to really have the crowd in the palm of his hand. He can lead you one way and then pull you the other. Mm-hmm. Alexa's the same way.
She can stop on a dime. Like, if you're watching basketball, the player crosses over, it stops on a dime and crosses over. She can, like, be going in a babyface direction in a promo and then stop on a dime and just flip it heel. Just like that. And, I mean, she's... You want to see her. You want to see her on the show. When she made that face at Ronda, I mean, I think that turned into a meme real quick.
Yeah, her facial expressions, her body chemistry, you don't see that a lot anymore. You don't see the wrestlers that fully tell the story.
Right.
Where she fully tells a story. She's good on the mic. She has the look.
Mm-hmm.
But then she also has the little subtleties that just really make that complete package for me.
Yeah, and I love the fact that WWE is going back to the old school psychology. I mean, there's so many little things that go into telling a story. I mean, you got Alexa making the mean girl faces at Ronda. I mean, Ronda's scowl, will scare you to death. I mean, you got so many people that just know how to just do those little things now, and it's shout out to creative, shout out to the people who are teaching these people, shout out to the veterans that are giving back to the business because it's making the product better.
Yeah, and I see the psychology in some
in
the areas, but not everyone across the board.
Right.
And so, but yeah, definitely with Alexa, I see it there. I see her as a complete talent. I think she's great. I think she's been well deserving of all her title wins.
Mm-hmm.
And that made me happy to see that a lot of people, when you think of the women's division, Trish and Lita were the first two that really were kind of beyond the traditional diva.
Right.
They were the legit performers, the legit athletes.
Right.
And to see Trish and Alexa lined up for the Evolution pay-per-view.
Oh my! When I heard that match announced, I was like, sold. I mean, I'm already a subscriber, but if I wasn't a subscriber and we still had to do the old school pay for the pay-per-views for like $59.95, I still would have gotten it.
Yeah. Just off track for a minute, but how do you, as a wrestling fan, how do you not subscribe to the network? $9.99 a month, and like you just said, if you were going back in the old days, and even back in the Attitude Era when the pay-per-views were $30 a pop.
Right.
And 12 of them. So $360 compared to $120, plus you get the entire archive.
The archive by itself is what had me sold because I've been able to go back and like rewatch. I was rewatching some old SummerSlams, and even today I put on the first SmackDown to try to be ready for the Something to Wrestle podcast tomorrow, the new episode of that. First SmackDown was right here in Kansas City, Missouri, and just being able to watch all that kind of stuff, I'm just like, this is what it's all about.
Yeah, the archive was definitely when I started my 30 days subscription. That free trial period, the archive had me,
Yep.
and I was hooked from there. But then also all the exclusive
Yeah.
shows to the network, things that you only see on the network. Like you just mentioned, Something Russell. I know they have their own podcast, but that on the network to actually see them, is a great show as well. But okay, so switching back in, WWE Championship at SummerSlam. Kind of mentioned it earlier. AJ Styles, Samoa Joe. Had some history from TNA, and then carrying all the way in now to the WWE. What'd you think of the match?
I thought it was a great match. I thought they gave you just enough to make you want more, which is what they really needed to do, because they just scratched the surface. I mean, I found some of their old stuff from, I believe it was, from TNA. I found some of their old stuff and was watching it. I'm like, they just getting started. And just the fact that Samoa Joe, knowing the backstory of how he got into the WWE and how he and AJ got in, and just the way that they can work. I mean, they are wrestlers. I mean, they can both talk, but they can wrestle too. And then, so you got those two. I mean, like I said, they're just getting started, and they're probably the only two people that can generate a TNA chant in WWE. And I don't even know what channel TNA comes on right now. Do they even chant TNA at TNA shows?
So, we know their history, and we know they can go, and we've seen them go. And I think in this particular match, like you said, you can tell this rivalry is just getting started. And you didn't see AJ wrestling the traditional style that AJ Styles would wrestle.
Right.
You saw him more delivering on that story, the psychology that Joe is taking him out of his game. Joe's trying to break him down mentally and physically. Was that the reason the crowd wasn't as hyped for this match, because the style was different? Or was it potentially that the crowd doesn't know the history of these two, so it doesn't feel as important? They don't know that story behind it?
I think the New York crowd is one of the smarter crowds, so I believe they know that they've had matches in the past. I think it may have been more the style that AJ was wrestling. It wasn't the high flying. It was more, you mess with a man's family, he's not going to try to jump off nothing to whoop your butt. He's just going to come straight at you.
So could it have been an opportunity in terms of putting together a package that, I know they can't use the TNA highlights,
right?
But to put together a package that kind of talks about their history,
right?
And to really go into the psychology department, so you understand of what's happening going in.
I think that's what you have to do, because clearly that's not a match that you want to be a one-off. I mean, that's a match that you can go back to. I mean, they could headline Survivor Series. You could bring it right back for WrestleMania. I mean, they don't even really, because they've wrestled so much, they don't really even need the title to have a legitimate feud.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know, I'm part of it as this match was going on in the pay-per-view. There had been so much already that was really exciting that had happened in SummerSlam. So it's possible that was the crowd kind of regaining its composure. But overall, I thought it was a great match. Especially knowing the story that they were trying to tell and watching Samoa Joe. I love the text that you sent me during that, that Samoa Joe just went Clubber Lang.
Exactly. And for those of you who don't know what I'm referring to, in Rocky 3, Clubber Lang is standing on the steps after he's challenged Rocky Balboa, and he says, "Hey woman, hey woman, I bet you stay up all night wishing you had a real man. I tell you what, bring your pretty little cell phone over here tonight, and I'll show you what a real man is." And Rocky Balboa, he hooked him at that point. So Samoa Joe, that's what AJ's head.
Yep. Yeah, and in Rocky 3, what he did, Clubber Lang got Balboa out of his game plan and got him to engage in a slugfest, which Clubber knew played into his strengths and he would win.
Yep.
We saw this at SummerSlam. We saw Samoa Joe taunting AJ's family and pulls AJ into his style of a match.
Exactly. And yes, we probably will do an episode on the Rocky movies at some point because they have influenced sports entertainment. But yeah, AJ got pulled out of his game. I mean, when you have your daughter there and you got your wife there, I mean, he snapped. And as a father, I'm sure you can relate to that too. If somebody crosses that line with your wife or your daughter, I mean, you're just gonna throw you off your game.
Yeah, and I love you can still see it building. You can see it through, AJ's interview on SmackDown, and then Joe coming out and putting him to sleep.
Yeah.
So we know more is coming, but what is that going to be?
I mean, again, it's like, don't give it to us right away.
I think we have, from the two of them, I think we have a series of upcoming shows.
Yeah. I mean, easily.
So yeah, I'm really curious what that big build-up's going to be. And when I just thought of that, because in my mind I'm trying to think of is there a style of match that this could be leading to that would be different? Could it be the Hell in a Cell? What could be going on with that? But then that just made me think of a point that I didn't point out earlier was in the tag match on SmackDown.
Mm-hmm.
We saw ladders.
Yep.
We saw tables.
Yep.
We saw chairs.
Yep. Oh my.
Could we potentially be seeing a rematch with the Bludgeon Brothers and New Day and TLC?
We could see that. And when you said about what type of match could we see with AJ and Samoa Joe, I thought of two words: Iron Man.
Absolutely. Yeah, and those are two guys that can do it.
Yeah, they can do it and they can keep you interested. I mean, could we do a 60-minute Iron Man match with the audience these days? If we could, I think it would have to be those two, and you'd have to do it on a pay-per-view. But these days, even if you did 30 with those guys, I think you got your money's worth.
Or even with a title, and just the nature that's coming out between the two of them, the aggressiveness, the almost street fight mentality that's coming out. Could you harness all that together and take advantage of this being a title match and bring out something that hasn't been seen in 18 years and bring out the triple tier cage that used to be in WCW?
You could. You absolutely could.
And here's two guys that are athletic enough that they could actually make that match enjoyable.
They could make the match enjoyable. They really can do any match and make it worthwhile.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to this one. And I know this isn't kind of one of the big pictures of what's been going on, like leading into SummerSlam. But as you know, we've been talking these matches back and forth. We've been talking about storylines and the stories that really hooked us and got us involved. I know we'll end up doing a show on the Super Showdown.
Yeah.
But how great is Triple H at telling a story and building a match in a single promo?
It's hard to put into words because when I think about the match they had at WrestleMania 28 and the shot that he mentioned at the end of him, Taker, and Shawn, I mean, you could say legitimately, he makes a valid point. Why would you want to mess with that? Mm-hmm. But then on the flip side of it, having been at WrestleMania 27 and seen the match that they had, and then to watch the match they had at WrestleMania 28, and then to even go back and watch the match they had at WrestleMania 17, I mean, when those two get in the ring together, it's magic.
And initially when I heard, Undertaker and Triple H at the Super Showdown, I was like, okay. Mm-hmm. And it just reminded me of what we've heard on, reported before, that when they typically travel to another country, that those promoters will say, hey, we really want to have this match up on the card.
Right.
And it might not be something that fits with the current storyline. I took it as that, Didn't think much of it.
Mm-hmm.
But then Triple H in a single promo on Monday Night Raw has me dying to watch this match to the point where I'm ready to get on the network and go back starting with their match at WrestleMania 17 and just watch their history together.
Yeah, and you also are curious to see, will they do anything with Taker to promote the match, or are they going to leave it all on Triple H? Will Triple H do anything else to promote the match? Because they really don't need to. However, you know that they could do some good stuff.
Yeah, and we still got some time. We still got well over a month.
Yeah.
So they can take their time and build that up, because with their names alone,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to draw some attention. And there's so much going on right now that people are going to watch the Super Showdown regardless if that match was on or not.
Right.
I think that's just that extra plus to get it over the top.
Exactly.
But when we had talked about how Alexa's facial expressions of that psychology, Triple H, watching how his mannerisms change, the inflection in his voice as he was trying to convey his message to the crowd, that I feel is the big difference between now and the Attitude Era.
Right.
Is during the Attitude Era, there was so much more in the storylines.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the storylines were longer developed. They were more thought out. There was more details in them. And then the performance that was given to really kind of sell that in the moment. And watching Triple H bring that together, and it's like, that's why he is who he is.
That's exactly why he is who he is. And that's why he calls himself, and he is the Game, because he studied. I mean, he studied Flair. He studied Dusty Rhodes. I mean, Piper. He studied anyone who's been great on the mic.
And he was right next to Shawn Michaels.
He was right next to HBK. And you look at him, he's another guy who can switch it up on you. I mean, he can give you the DX Triple H. He can give you the COO Triple H. And then he can give you just the badass Triple H. I mean, and he can kind of bring it all together in one promo.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, it will be interesting. Will Undertaker come back to help promote this? Will we see more from Triple H, or will we see maybe the 2 weeks leading up to the show something happen? And if it's truly a one and done, or will this help transition one of them into the stories?
Yeah, more than likely it'll be transitioning Triple H into one of the stories, because, I mean, Triple H can still go. I think Taker can do whatever he wants to do. I should just say it like that.
Yeah, I almost feel like it's any moment now we're going to get the announcement that Taker's going into the Hall of Fame, and that's it.
Right.
Which, understandable, he's had a long-running career.
Mm-hmm.
He's been on top the entire time. Not too many guys can say that.
Yeah, I mean, I remember his mean mark back in WCW, and then seeing him come into WWF, when it was WWF back then, that Survivor Series, you were wondering, is this character going to last? I mean, just because they had never done anything like that before.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, within his first year in the company, he's pinning Hulk Hogan.
Right.
It's like, okay, he's going to be around.
And he's evolved that character to fit with the changing of the times.
Mm-hmm.
So what I think, switching gears now to what I think is the biggest event coming out of SummerSlam, and which I think is going to have huge impact on Monday Night Raw going forward, the Hounds of Justice are back.
Yes. And I wore my Roman Reigns shirt just for our buddy Derek Gray. Shout out to Derek down in Dallas. I had to wear it because he really doesn't like Roman Reigns at all. So I had to wear this just for him. But yeah, I got excited when I heard that Sierra Hotel, India. I got excited when I heard that.
So let's start. There's a lot of moving pieces to bringing this show together. So let's start with the first part of it, the opening match of SummerSlam.
Mm-hmm.
Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose in his corner, against Dolph Ziggler with Drew McIntyre in his corner. What did you think about the match?
It was, I mean, just the best match of the night, in my opinion. I mean, Ziggler can go. I really hope he doesn't leave WWE. But, I mean, you got to give the man a world title run at some point because he's earned it too. I guess there's only so many titles to go around. I mean, Rollins, gosh, what was the move he did? Was it the inverted superplex?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just, I mean, you don't see people innovate. You feel like you've seen everything, and then he pulls that out, and you have to rewind it to see. It's like watching watching Jordan back in the day switching hands in midair. You have to rewind it to see if you really saw that.
Yeah, the inverted superplex really stood out to me. The ripcord knee.
Yeah.
Was another that it happened so quick and looked so good that I wanted back to watch it again.
Yeah. And just the little things again with these two because they appreciate the business. You see Ziggler with the IC title on the front of his tights. I mean, throwback to Ravage and Rick in 1989 when he had the IC title on the front of his tights going into WrestleMania, into SummerSlam, excuse me. I mean, these guys understand the wrestling business, and they know how to work, and they know how to listen to someone because obviously they listen to someone who helped them put this match together, and they put on a clinic.
Yeah, and in ring, they are two of the best in-ring performers there is right now today.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think about Dean Ambrose and Drew McIntyre ringside?
I thought that they used them perfectly. I mean, they weren't overly involved, but you knew that they were out there.
Yeah, you definitely took advantage of them being there, so it wasn't that they just stood there. But yeah, they didn't pull away from the quality in the ring.
Right.
They didn't distract from what we were there to watch, was the Intercontinental Championship.
Exactly.
So speaking of, before we transition on from there, so we know Seth Rollins takes the IC title. We switched to Monday Night Raw, and we had Dean Ambrose against Dolph Ziggler. Good matchup again, and we see Dean Ambrose hit Dirty Deeds from the air. He gets Dolph Ziggler up in the air, comes down, catches him with Dirty Deeds. Great move. Match is over. And now there's talk that Dolph Ziggler had a contract offered to him to extend with WWE, and that he declined to extend. Do you think this is the end that we'll see of Dolph Ziggler? And if so, where does he go?
Well, Ring of Honor is starting to get some buzz. I mean, I was watching even a little bit of their stuff on YouTube the other day with Cody Rhodes. I mean, so it's got a little buzz. I mean, he could definitely go there and do something. It might not be a bad move for him to go there because the fact of the matter is there's only so much room at the top, and they're clearly going with Roman, whether we like it or not. I mean, however you feel about it, and he's probably not looking at world title opportunities right now. Maybe if he goes away and comes back, that could be good for him.
Could that be what's needed? Could it be that you just need to take him off TV and then repackage him? You mentioned earlier the IC title on his pants, similar to Rick Rude.
Yeah.
We've seen multiple matches where he's went almost move for move with what Shawn Michaels had done in the match.
Mm-hmm.
His boots are styled after Shawn Michaels.
Right.
His look is styled after Shawn Michaels. His nickname is styled after Shawn Michaels' nickname. And so much of what he does is, and it's not where you had, like Triple H, Shawn Michaels, people like that had been influenced. Triple H, you've seen him pull from Harley Race, but really make it his own. You saw Shawn Michaels, everyone knows, really looked up to Ric Flair.
Right.
But he made it his own.
Right.
Where Dolph Ziggler, it doesn't feel like it's that far removed to make it his own.
Right.
And so has that really hindered him, that he hasn't really developed who he is as an individual?
I don't know so much that it's hindered him. I just feel that, again, it's just so heavy at the top, and he just has kind of been kind of at the wrong place at the wrong time. I mean, remember when he cashed in after WrestleMania 29 when he won? The crowd went nuts. But then he got the concussion and basically dropped the title at that point, and I don't think he's had the world title since then.
Yeah, and when I look at him, I see he's so talented.
Mm-hmm.
And I think back to the storyline where he was pointing out to the crowd, like, people that weren't as good as him, necessarily. Mm-hmm. That he's imitating their entrances.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, is this what it's going to take to get me over? And that, I would love to see him repackaged to have more attitude. To come out and just be more aggressive and to be himself.
Mm-hmm.
Repackage Dolph Ziggler, have him come out and see where that goes. Because he has all the skills it takes. I mean, him and AJ Styles could tear the house down.
Easily.
Him and Samoa Joe could tear the house down.
Mm-hmm.
He could step in the ring, him and Seth Rollins competing for the world title, competing for Universal Championship, and just tear the house down. He doesn't have to be consistently at the Intercontinental title or U.S. title level.
Right.
He has that ability to go to the next level and deliver those 5-star matches one after the other with multiple opponents.
He does have that ability. It's just a question of what's it going to take for him to get that chance, because when you're on Raw, you've had the part-time champions for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And now you've got Roman with the belt. I mean, maybe now is that time, because Brock is gone pretty much. I mean, Dolph has shown, with his run with the IC title and his feud with Seth, that people will want to see him. And you've got McIntyre with him, so it makes sense for him to be in that world title picture right now. The question is he going to stay?
Mm-hmm. So, we've laid out the first part.
Mm-hmm.
The first two members of the Shield. So now, the next part of the story. SummerSlam. Braun Strowman, the Monster in the Bank, against Kevin Owens.
Squash.
Exactly, squash match. So, what did you think about the match?
Squash.
Yeah, Kevin Owens definitely showed he can bump.
Yeah. Kevin Owens can definitely bump, and once you saw it was a short match, I'm like, oh yeah, we're going to see Braun again tonight. And Kevin Owens has been taking bumps. He just took the bump off the top of the cage, onto the table. He's taking a bump in the porta potty. Well, allegedly. Stunt doubles and, illusions. It can happen. But he's a bump machine.
Yeah, him taking the bump off the cage, and then the shoulder he takes on the outside of the ring from Strowman, flips, lands on the outside of the ring, and in my mind, watching him taking these bumps, it reminds me, like, when you look at him physically,
mm-hmm.
he doesn't look like a world-class athlete.
No.
His body style reminds me of Mick Foley.
Right.
The way he's bumping reminds me of Mick Foley.
Yeah.
I think the difference between the two is he has much more of a style that can kind of waver and go with his opponent.
Yeah. He's got a more diverse style because, when we first saw him come into WWE from NXT, he and Cena blew the roof off. Cena puts him over clean. He can have amazing matches with depending on who it's with. He can definitely adapt. He can brawl if he needs to, or he can be technical if he needs to, and he can talk. He's a complete package.
So let's move into the next portion of this story that's going to unfold for the Shield. Finn Balor
mm-hmm.
versus Baron Corbin. Finn Balor comes out as the Demon King. What did you think of the match?
I love seeing him come out as the Demon King, and it just told us it more so. I felt like it was just more of just like getting him on the show and kind of building more of the story. And Baron Corbin, shout out to Kansas City native, selling the fear of the demon, it puts that it definitely got the demon character over.
And it helped Finn look strong.
Yes.
Which we know will be important come to the next night on Raw.
Mm-hmm.
And what I also wondered was that demon, because it wasn't advertised. Typically, when he's going to play the role of the demon,
Right.
it's advertised ahead of time because it's something people are interested in to get more people to tune in. Because it wasn't advertised and they sold it, is that going to play a bigger picture later on as we go through this? But the one thing that really stood out to me about this match was we had noticed that they were going to wrestle.
Mm-hmm.
But yet Baron Corbin comes out still dressed as Constable Corbin.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have your COO Triple H. He's not going to wrestle in his suit against
Right.
Undertaker.
Right.
So when Baron Corbin has plenty of notice, he didn't have enough time to pack his wrestling gear.
I kind of wondered that, but when you watch him lately, I really haven't seen much of a difference between what he's been wrestling in lately and his wrestling gear. I mean, he's cut his hair off. He doesn't come out as the lone wolf anymore. So I guess he figured, hey, if I'm gonna get it squashed, I might as well look good.
Yeah, to me, it would have sold it more if he was actually dressed in wrestling gear. Monday night, it made sense. He didn't have notice. He was just thrown in a match.
Yeah.
But when you have notice, you figured you would be dressed to go.
And plus, he figured, I mean, storyline wise, he figured this was gonna be an easy night work for him, so he didn't have to dress.
So now we move into the main event of SummerSlam. Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar. Right off the bat, Strowman comes out and says he's going to cash in, but he's going to do it face to face. What'd you think?
I respect that. I mean, that just shows how much of a badass he is. He's like, I don't need to come up behind you. I'm going to tell you what I'm doing, and what are you going to do about it? I mean, it reminds me of Larry Bird. Larry Bird used to tell people, I'm going to dribble 2 times, I'm going to pump fake, you're going to go for the pump fake, I'm going to hit the jumper on you, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it.
Yeah, and I love the fact that he did that because it was so unusual compared to what we've seen with Money in the Bank in the past.
Again, it's a psychological aspect. I mean, he's a monster. Why does a monster need to come up behind you?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. What'd you think about the match itself?
I thought they made Roman look really strong because Brock is on his way out, and it was a different match than anything that they've had in the past, because in the past it was always Brock starting off dominant. I mean, Roman figured finally, okay, let's flip this. I need to come out and be aggressive. I mean, take the fight to him, and Brock made Roman look good.
Yeah, we saw, outside of Roman, the only time we've seen this, somebody really taking it to Brock right off the bat was Goldberg.
Yeah.
And so we see Roman take that approach, and what was interesting to me was leading into the match.
Mm-hmm.
You had a crowd that was sick of not seeing Brock Lesnar.
Right.
So you went from a crowd that was tired of Roman always being in the main event picture.
Right.
And when I heard that it was going to be Roman and Brock again, I was like, why? Like, just come on, move on to someone else. Let Strowman cash in. Let Finn Balor get a shot.
Right.
But then you go in there and they were able to take a crowd and turn them from booing Roman to a couple weeks before SummerSlam are actually cheering for Roman as Brock's in the ring, destroying Kurt Angle and putting Paul Heyman to the ground.
Right. And to be fair, I kind of wonder if some of that is being sweetened and to make it sound like the crowd is cheering Roman, which I feel like there's been a change in the crowd, but I do also know that they can do some things in post-production to make it sound a little bit better. But you did see a shift in the crowd's attitude, because Brock did start to get booed, and even at SummerSlam, it was just kind of like, we know you're leaving.
Mm-hmm. And so leading into SummerSlam, it just felt, and maybe it was because the lack of seeing Brock, in which I understand the whole special attraction.
Right.
You know, Andre was a special attraction. You know, back in the day, Hogan wasn't there all the time. And I get that. in the modern era, I am not used to seeing a champion not there. The whole 30-day defend your title rule went away without ever saying it went away.
Right.
And so that, leading into it, because I guess it was from a lack of seeing Brock, or maybe it was because I already felt that the Roman Brock had run its course,
Yeah.
that I was looking for some sort of swerve. I didn't know if that was going to be Heyman, teaming up with Roman Reigns, Heyman leading Strowman to the ring to cash in. I felt like there was going to be something more at SummerSlam.
I felt like there was too, and there was, when you saw Brock turn on Heyman like a couple weeks before, you kind of thought that maybe Heyman's going to be doing something different, but then he's still coming out with Brock at SummerSlam. So it's like, okay, well, they're not doing that. But the match itself really felt like, okay, let's get this rivalry over with and let's move on to something else.
Yeah, and so when you're talking about Heyman, like the interview with Renee Young prior to it, where they show what we didn't see. So we saw the interview, and then the next week we saw the rest that ended the interview, when he was saying that he didn't think Roman could win unless, and then he never finished his sentence. So, that's still hanging in the air. We don't know what happens. So we go into the SummerSlam match, and yes, we see Roman, like you said, come out completely physical. Brock looks strong. Roman looks strong. Roman walks out with the title. So now we come into Monday night, and Roman continues to play on that he's not the champion who's not going to be there. He's the champion that is going to be there. He's a champion that's going to fight. And he gives Finn Balor, the first Universal Champion, a shot at the title.
I like it. I like the fact that, he's there. You love him or hate him, he's there. And he really doesn't have horrible matches.
Yeah, he's had some good matches with Cena. We've seen him have, just multiple matches across the board where he's performed well. We know he can talk on the mic. It was almost like the crowd had just got tired of seeing him at this level, which makes me think of what ended up happening Monday was the right move.
I think it was ultimately the right move because, he's definitely gotten better on the mic, but sometimes some people are great solo acts, but sometimes some people are best when they're in a group. And I don't know what the case is with Roman, but we'll see how it plays out. But it is kind of cool that they came back together, and they got the world title, they've got the IC title. They could be holding all the gold.
Yeah, so we go into Monday. Roman Reigns, Finn Balor.
Right.
Strowman tells Finn Balor ahead of time the same thing, that he's going to cash in. So you get into the ring, and Roman and Finn Balor, what'd you think about the match?
Excellent match.
I thought so too. I thought Finn looked great. I thought Roman looked great. The ending, just was perfectly positioned. Just the timing of it, like Finn suddenly took command, and you're like, oh, Finn might pull this off, and then Roman, boom, pulls it away at the end.
Yeah.
And then, boom, here comes Strowman. What was interesting to me was, if you think about boxing, if your champion never gets beat, that champion's the linear champion. In boxing, they don't recognize, they'll put a title on someone, but they consider you a paper champion. You're not the linear champion until you beat the champion. Roman Reigns is now the linear Universal Champion because he's the first person to beat Finn Balor with the Universal title on the line.
Right.
So Finn Balor never lost it, and now he had his match for the Universal title, and Roman Reigns beat him.
Right.
So he is the true Universal Champion. And then here comes Strowman. Were you expecting the title to immediately be pulled off Roman Reigns?
Once I saw Braun come to the ring and give him the match that Finn and Roman had just had, I was pretty sure that Braun was about to leave with the belt.
I thought so too. I thought this is it. He's going to cash in. He's going to take the title and that's how Raw's going to go off the air.
Right.
What were you thinking when all of a sudden the Shield music hit?
I texted Derek, or was it you or Derek? I texted, yes! Derek wasn't happy, but it was something that you didn't see coming. Mm-hmm. Because everybody had been kind of doing their own thing. I mean, they cool, but they've been doing their own thing. But then they come out, even in the Shield gear.
Right.
And, I mean, part of me is like, okay, are they about to flip on Roman and make Braun the newest member of the Shield?
Yeah, when the music hit, when I heard the Sierra Hotel India Echo, I was like, whoa. And I said it because I didn't expect it to happen. You know, when we did our SummerSlam recap show before Monday Night Raw came on the air, and I was talking about, it felt like there should have been a swerve. It felt like there should have been something in there. We got a swerve, and it swerved me. I did not see it coming. And
and it's so hard to do that nowadays. I mean, because there's so much stuff on the internet that I try to stay away from the spoilers and stuff as much as possible. I mean, nobody mentioned this, and nobody saw this coming. And once you put Roman back in with the Shield, the boos stop.
Yeah, exactly. And so what's interesting is you heard the crowd reacting.
Yeah.
To the Shield coming out. The crowd obviously didn't see it coming either. Strowman has been so over that when they triple powerbomb him through the table and then stand there, are the Shield back the way they started? Are they the heels?
That's a great question, because technically, if you were looking at it from the 80s lens, they're the heels, because they cost Braun Strowman, actually, since the bell didn't get the ring, the cash-in didn't happen, but they cost Braun Strowman the championship, helping their friend, and it's 3-on-1. So from the 80s standpoint, yeah, they're heels, but...
And as over as Strowman is,
mm-hmm.
It feels like they have to be the heels.
Yeah, I mean, technically, yes, they are the heels, but in 2018, I mean, the crowd determines it, and they might have to figure out a way to make... I mean, the only way to really make them heels now would be if they were to beat up Finn.
Well, do you take that natural hatred the crowd has for Roman Reigns and fuel that to make them the legitimate heels?
You would have to, because they've been cheering for Rollins for so long, mm-hmm. and they've been cheering for Ambrose for so long, and they've been booing Roman for so long, but when you put him in with the Shield, they start cheering for him. And with what they've been doing over the last few months, they've been cheering for him. So
we definitely run the risk of them being the NWO style heels, to where they are so big, mm-hmm. they're so good individually, and now back together as a group that people loved, mm-hmm. that they're the bad guys, but they're going to be cooler than the faces.
Right. And you also have to figure... WWE, one thing that they're definitely good at, I mean, the Roman thing aside, because some people feel like that he's been forced down our throats, saying like they did with Cena, they listen to the audience. I mean, they're going to listen. And I have confidence that they're going to find a way to keep Braun over as a baby face, and keep the Shield over as baby faces, because they sell merch, crowd wants to see them.
See, and I think they're going to make them the heels, and I think we're going to see the merchandise sell as heels, which
True.
The only times we've ever seen that in history, the original NWO.
Right there.
Where the original NWO as heels sold more merchandise than anyone else on the WCW roster, and to this day, you can still look out in the crowd and see NWO shirts.
Right, so what you have to do then is they just got to start beating up baby faces.
So we know they've taken a shot at Strowman. We know he's going to come back. Mm-hmm. So we know that's there. Was Finn Balor positioned to look dominant at SummerSlam and to show the demon and then be positioned in the main event on this because he's going to be another person the Shield targets. We know him and Seth Rollins started having something earlier in the year for that, competing around the IC title picture, and that just kind of came to an end without really finishing. Is he going to step in the picture? Strowman, Reigns, Balor, Rollins.
I could see that, but Finn also has. I mean, he may still feel like he has a legit claim to the world title too, which at some point I believe he's going to get that back again because he feels like he never really got a run with it.
Yeah. Which puts him in a perfect position to be against the Shield as well.
Right.
So then, if that's the case, who else steps up on their side? Strowman, Balor, who else steps on their side to go against the Shield?
McIntyre?
Yeah.
Especially if Ziggler's gone.
Yeah, if Ziggler's gone, does McIntyre step in there as the new face? If Ziggler comes back, is this his move to bring him in as a face?
Possibly. Who knows? It's exciting again. It's exciting again.
Yeah, it's very exciting because for the first time in a while, I feel like I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, for the first time in a while, it's like actually wanted to watch.
Yeah, it didn't feel predictable, which it was feeling predictable, but then this happened and now the unpredictability is there. And it looks like the Shield's going to be together for a while. We're already seeing advertisements that they are going to be competing as the Shield at Super Showdown, so we know that's in October.
Yep.
You had the ability to keep them together and make them a Survivor Series team. And to continue to go from there. So the question is, what happens at Hell in a Cell? Do you put Reigns in with Strowman one-on-one inside the cell to make sure the Shield can't interfere? Or do you put everyone in there in a War Game style match?
I don't think they're going to do War Games just yet. They might save that for a Survivor Series type situation. I believe you've got Reigns. I believe you can do Reigns against Strowman. But he's the monster. I mean, as the Monster in the Bank, that does make sense. And you can say you're keeping the Shield out, but are you really keeping the Shield out?
Yeah. Or do we see something similar to WrestleMania 15, where they work their way into the cage?
Yeah.
Or are we going to see, does it not have to necessarily go in the Hell in a Cell structure? Could we see a potential 6-man tag match or a 6-pack challenge?
I don't think we'll see a 6-pack challenge. I think we may see a Hell in a Cell match where somehow somebody gets inside of the cage. It helps Roman retain the title. The Shield that would get them some heat, probably. That or, wait a minute, haven't Braun and Roman had a Hell in a Cell match before? Or was it the latter? They've gone at it before, I know that. But I mean, Roman's going to be the champion for a while. We might as well just accept that. I mean, even if he drops it, he'll be headlining WrestleMania again.
Yeah, and I thought they did a great job of making sure Braun didn't actually cash in.
Yeah.
So that suitcase stays there, the opportunity stays there at any given moment.
Exactly. And he's going to cash it in and get the belt. It's just a matter of when, because you don't want to tarnish the importance of that Money in the Bank.
And so, to me, I think to really get the payoff from the Shield, this has to take time.
Yeah.
I think you got great guys to bring them up against, and that you can continue to work this through tag matches, individual matches, etc., and really spread this out and get the most out of all these top guys.
You can, and with the Shield being back together, you have the ability to, just like when the Mega Powers came together, I mean, with Mega Powers had more of the slow handshake, the Shield puts it all together like that. You have the ability to take a Rollins, who has not headlined a WrestleMania, which he has been wanting to do, but he hasn't been able to since he was injured, and he did cash in Money in the Bank at the end of the one. You have the ability to build towards a Reigns Rollins WrestleMania main event, which is what I'm predicting. I mean, because there can be that internal bickering, because who did Rollins pin to win his title? when he cashed in.
Mm-hmm. And then when he came back,
Exactly.
after his knee injury, beat Roman to regain the title. And I love the fact, and why I'm really hoping the Shield are heels, is Seth Rollins as a heel is an amazing heel.
Yes.
And so I really want to see those heel promos from Seth Rollins again.
Yes. Yes. I mean, as hot as the crowd is behind him right now, if he flips heel, which these days it just seems so hard to flip somebody heel because you never know what the crowd is going to do. You take a New York crowd, I mean, back in the day, how could Becky hurt her friend after the match? Oh my God. Nowadays, it's hell yeah.
Yeah. And when you look at Seth as a babyface, as the good guy, his character, he's the architect. Yeah. He's the man. It's hard to portray that as a face.
Yeah.
The only time I've seen him truly use strategy to really show the architect, to show he's thinking, he's planning, as a face was when he brought out Dean Ambrose to be in his corner at SummerSlam. And so, you know, we see that, but as a heel, we've seen it, the planning, the scheming, and that's one of the things I'm excited for, to really gain that character back.
And it feels like we're headed there now because, I mean, with the bringing Ambrose back in, and then Rollins doing Rollins bringing Ambrose out to help Reigns keep the belt Monday night. You're seeing that happen again.
Did we see some potential foreshadowing at SummerSlam when Seth Rollins comes out basically dressed as Thanos?
Yes.
The all-powerful Marvel villain, and no one catches on that he's coming out dressed as a powerful villain.
So that's what he was. I could not figure that out. So now it makes sense.
So he comes out dressed as a powerful villain as a face, and it was almost foreshadowing of things to come.
The dude thinks he gets it.
Yeah, I don't know how many people are going to put that together until. So this might be a Kayfabe Critique exclusive. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely just blew my mind with the whole Thanos thing. I was like, now I'm going to have to go home and watch Age of Ultron again.
So, anything else that we're missing from this week?
No, I don't think we missed anything from this week. I just think I'm excited to get this one done. I'm glad we haven't had any technical difficulties. Again, just excited to see where things go from here, and probably gonna go home and finish watching SmackDown, the first SmackDown from '99, to watch The Rock vs. Triple H with Shawn Michaels in it with those really, really, really short shorts.
And I'm hoping on something, Russell, that they address Shawn Michaels as the commissioner. He had been the babyface commissioner. Super kicks a Rock, turns heel, gets the original DX back in the ring at the end of the match, and then gone. He's not to be seen on TV again for almost a year.
He wasn't back there later? Nope, that was in '98 when he was back there later that year.
That
was right.
He super kicks a Rock in August of '99, and he doesn't return until May of 2000 when he comes out to announce that he's going to be stepping away as a commissioner, but he's going to referee Triple H and Undertaker. So I've always been curious. I've heard rumors of why he was removed from camera, but I'd like to hear what was the plan. What were they going to do with him? Because it just seems that was a little bit too big of a moment to not go anywhere with it.
Right. Because I've heard rumors too that he didn't want, I mean, I guess at that point he really couldn't, he wasn't ready to come back and wrestle yet anyway, so it's not that he wasn't wanting to work with The Rock at that, because he couldn't work at that point, so who knows?
There was rumors that he had made comments of Austin not wanting to lose to Triple H at SummerSlam, and only willing to put over Foley, and then Foley had to lose to Triple H on Raw afterwards, and then he made comments of, he rolled out of a hospital bed to make sure Austin got the belt. So it'll be interesting to see what's the real story, what was the plans with it. But, so, definitely a lot of things coming up in the wrestling world. We'll keep watching that. And stay tuned. Please go to our YouTube channel, subscribe to us. We're going to keep loading some content to start with on YouTube. And we'll be preparing for episode number 2, which we're going to take a topic that has definitely been one of the most talked about topics in the history of wrestling.
Probably the most.
The Montreal Screwjob. But we're going to come at it with a little bit of a different approach. We're going to look at it, Montreal Screwjob, was it a work or a shoot? And we'll discuss through all those options.
I'm definitely thinking shoot, but I can see some work elements to it. But I'm going to take a look at it again because I got every DVD connected to it. So let's take another look.
Yep. And so we'll be going through all the series and look forward to seeing everybody on our second episode.
Peace.